Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott. And on this particular right angle, I would like to start off by assuring you I'm not looking for victim points here. I've heard from many people that talking honestly about some of these issues really helps them, and that's really all I'm trying to do. Plus, there's a larger issue at play here. So last 2 weeks have been really rough for me, and they've been rough for me because for 15 years, I've been taking 20 milligrams of Adderall to help me focus. Before I started doing this work, I was working as an editor in Hollywood in an Avid edit suite, and there would be producers behind me making notes, and I would fall asleep at the edit table. I thought I had narcolepsy. I went in and took the sleep thing. I had 35 electrodes coming off of me. I had apnea. I used CPAP. I used everything. I could not figure it out. And then Adderall came along, and it really changed my life. It allows me to stay awake during the day, and that's why I take it. Now, the problem is that I wouldn't say it was addictive, but what the mechanical problem was, and the thing I really want to talk about today is we're out of Adderall. Like, the country is out of Adderall. It's not my pharmacy's out of Adderall. The country is out of Adderall. And to my surprise and regret, it turns out that coming off of Adderall is worse than coming off of SSRIs. If you have an antidepressant and you suddenly just stop it, you will get more depressed than you were at the beginning. It just kind of buckets out, then sort of levels out. And this was much worse. Just debilitating for a week, right? Just debilitating. Like I said, I'm not doing this for victim points. I'm doing this because there's some 20 million people out there who also don't get their Adderall. And here's what the real point is. Steve, let's start with you. Scott, let me start with you. Me not getting my Adderall made me exceedingly uncomfortable and cut my productivity. And I wouldn't be surprised if there were a significant number of suicides as a result of this. But it is survivable, right? I was not addicted to Adderall. I didn't have to go break into stores to get it, but I was dependent on it. I think that's a much better way to put it, right? Now, what happens if all of a sudden somebody says, well, looks like we're just out of insulin. We just don't have any more. The company that made the insulin is out of business now or was bought by somebody else. Sorry, when are you going to have some more insulin? No idea. That's what I was told. Doesn't that alarm you a little bit?
Is Adderall only made by one company? Is that
no? This is generic. This is generic.
So it's off label now,
and it's not a terrible look. Essentially, it's street meth, right? It's made in the Breaking Bad lab by somebody who knows what they're doing. so it is not like some. It's not like some unbelievably exotic drug with all of these weird kind of ingredients.
Well, as good capitalists, this is the kind of problem that the market should have taken care of. Like, to me,
yes.
It seems like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop for you to tell me what kind of regulatory problem was introduced to keep this from the free flow of production. Because my guess is it wasn't free. Somebody was paying for it, whether you or your insurance company or somebody. And so as long as there's a market for something, it'll continue to be produced. As we've seen with illegal and illicit drugs, it's the demand side of the equation that drives the value and keeps the production rolling. So can you tell me anything about that side?
I can, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's really one of the major points I want to make. I have Blue Cross insurance, Blue Shield, and it's good insurance, and it costs a lot. And normally, a 2-month prescription would be something like $7 or $8, I think, right? So something that I don't remember the exact number because
that's
it was that's what I paid. It was essentially trivial for me, and so it was $7 or $8 for 2 months. When I found a supply of Adderall after calling around everywhere, I got a 2-month supply, and with my insurance, it was $169 with my insurance. Without my insurance, I'm quite sure it's north of $500 for a month. And this is what concerns me, Scott. One of the things that concerns me is, well, there just isn't any more. Sorry, you're just going to have to tough it out, diabetics. And the other thing is that this is a potential business model, right? When you have people, when you're talking about medication, especially, and this wasn't true in my case, but especially life-saving medication like insulin or something like that. Yeah. Now you're at a point where you can create an artificial shortage and ramp the price up as much as you want to, and people will find a way to pay for it. They have to. They'll pay it before they they pay their rent.
So you're saying it can be had, but at a much steeper price. Before
I'm
it
saying,
sounded like you were saying it couldn't be had at all.
No, it couldn't be had. It was gone, right? It was just plain gone. All across the country, people have known about this since the end of summer, and it was not available. But when some of it started to come back online, like anything else, scarcity and all the rest of it. And those two dynamics, we don't have any more of the medicine. And, oh, by the way, we found a little bit of the medicine, and it's 200 times what you paid for it before. So do you want it or not?
Well, and this sounds to me like the perfect argument for somebody who's not on your side of the political aisle to jump in and say the government needs to be involved in this because we need to
It'll make commies out of you. I swear to God, it will turn us all into communists.
We need to have giant tanks. The National Reserve of Adderall has to be in some giant secure facility somewhere.
The Strategic Adderall Reserve. That's what we need.
I'll keep the National Valium stockpile in my house for you.
He's already got most of the underground vodka supplies.
So how do you not go in that direction? That's what I'm at. Like, because this is where the rubber meets the road. It's not where we're talking about theoretical, abstract, political concepts and notions. This is, I'm a guy who needs this stuff. I can't get this stuff. Somebody needs to do something about it. Who is that somebody?
So so exactly like you said, I thought, you know what? I'm sick of these pharmaceutical companies that realize, my God, you sound like a communist. And so there is a non-communist solution to this, right? But we're not using it. The non-communist solution to this is for all of these laboratories out there and all of these people that are capable of compounding this relatively simple medication is for them to look out there and say, there's no Adderall. That's one of the most popular drugs in America. I think we should start making some Adderall. And then competition comes in and people start filling an unmet supply, and the free market does its wonders, and now we have 700 Adderall producers. The price of Adderall actually goes down over what it was prior to, and we don't run out of it anymore. But the federal government will not let you open up a mom and pop pharmaceutical company. Yes. And right. So here we are, Scott. Here we are.
Yeah, and that's why I knew, even though I knew nothing, this is the great thing about having conservative principles, is even if you don't know anything about the particulars of the situation, you immediately come to a certain conclusion because of a pattern in history.
How did the government screw it up?
It's a simple recipe. So what did the government do to screw this up? Now, it still doesn't explain why there's a shortage in the first place. Like, they got to the bottom of the Adderall mines and they couldn't find any more. They dug too deep and there was no more down there. But, no! That's right. But it indicates that, what do you want the federal government to do? Do you think there should be no regulation of this, or do you think it should be easier for somebody to get a license to manufacture Adderall? Should we take, America's great meth lab developers and put them to work doing something good for society, like white hat hackers?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. No. Yeah. So, Steve, you know what else is rare and expensive these days? Eggs.
Oh, yeah.
Eggs you have to take out a loan to get eggs, right? And this strikes me as a similar kind of a thing. Now, in the case of eggs, apparently there was a big bird flu thing in the winter. It took a lot of the hens away and so on. But again, it's impossible for a person to start their own egg farm and sell eggs to people because they have to get FDA approval for all of this stuff. So once again, the market isn't allowed to work because of these regulatory agencies. I'm not saying those regulatory agencies don't do any good, but I am saying that that with these things in place, artificial shortages that could be cured by the market arise, and they can't be cured by the market.
Yeah, one of the very first things I ever posted to the internet is actually AOL. This would have been like '94. I did a super long, detailed list of the two cows theory of economics. Communism, you have two cows, the government takes them both and shoots you. Capitalism, of course, you have two cows, you sell one and buy a bull. The one I came up with, I think I came up with this one, or maybe I got it from somebody else, I can't remember now, it's been almost 30 years, was the New Deal. You have two cows, the government slaughters them, but gives you some milk from the other farmers' cows. Just, government is stupid and pig-headed, especially when it means well. that said, we're in a situation now where you can get fentanyl anywhere and Adderall nowhere. This is extremely messed up. And
yeah,
I was having a conversation with Sarah Hoyt several years ago. We were Sarah Hoyt's a science fiction author, former Colorado resident, good friends of my wife, and she grew up in Portugal.
Does the night shift at Instapundit?
Yes, Sarah grew up in Portugal in the 70s when the politics was basically the fascists versus the communists, and you just didn't know who was going to be in charge one week to the next, and it was just awful all the time. So she is very much a free market capitalist, and I adore her. We were visiting a mutual friend in Europe, and he assured us after dinner on the first night, as we were loading the dishwasher, that this was an older dishwasher and not one of the new models that is awful by government regulation. And this started a whole conversation. The new dishwashers, oh, they conserve water. Yeah, but they don't get your dishes clean. So you got to run it 3 or 4 times. And, of course, now you're using more water. And Sarah said to me, and I'll never forget this, she says, the awful dishwasher, the laundry detergent that doesn't get your clothes clean, all of these regulations, she said, they make everything just a little bit worse. And I think that's what they're trying to get us used to, is everything just being a little bit worse. You know, our electricity used to be cheap and plentiful. Now it is expensive and unreliable. It takes 2 hours to charge your car instead of 5 hours to fill it, or 5 minutes to fill it up. Just making everything a little bit worse so that we expect less. And number one, I think she's right, and number two, it's horrible. Number three, is there something actually worse going on that's going to have cascade effects further on, and it's our loss of expertise. Little things like we've outsourced our pharmaceuticals to China. And it isn't just that we lost the ability to make the Adderall ourselves, and it's impossible, basically, to start up a new pharmaceutical company here for reasons you already listed, or pharmaceutical manufacturing here, but we've lost the expertise in how to do this. Our Navy is woefully small. And not only did we cut the Navy too much, but we cut our ability to build ships by too much. And so you no longer have the electrical guys or the welder guys or all the other expert jobs it takes to build ships. So even if we threw a ton of money at the problem, it wouldn't matter because we don't have the expertise anymore to do these things, or at least not to do them at scale. And that makes everything take longer, and it makes everything more expensive, and it conditions us to expect things to cost more and take longer and be worse than they used to be. They are resetting our expectations downward.
That's perfectly worded.
If there's anything more in this world we have to fight, Bill, this just occurred to me. If there's anything more in this world we have to fight, it's this. This is it. This is the battle right here.
Hey, Bill, can I throw in something?
Of course.
Yeah,
Look,
Steve just made me think of something. And here's sorry about that. Here's the issue. Markets are nimble. Government is plodding. And this is something you don't hear conservatives say often enough, we want it to be that way. We want government to be plodding. We do not want a nimble government. We want government to be slow and careful. We don't want it to do anything fast. Take your time, think about it, get tied up for a while. That's fine. Just don't pass any laws. So, but here's the problem. Because government is plodding and markets are nimble, if something goes wrong in markets, the nimble, agile nature of markets will take care of it right away. But if they have to go through government first and government is plodding, then it will get it bogged down. It's like when there's a hurricane, all of a sudden you've got bottled water available everywhere. It's $10 a bottle, but you can get it.
It's absolutely right. It's
there.
Everywhere.
Exactly. But if government gets involved, then you can't get bottled water, but at least you're not paying confiscatory rates for bottled water. You're just, dying of thirst.
Yeah, that's all. When Steve said Adderall is nowhere but fentanyl is everywhere.
Yeah.
That's true, and that reflects upon the government. I don't mean the Democrats. I don't mean the Republicans. I don't even mean our government. It reflects upon governance. It reflects upon the idea that there are people who are responsible for ordering society and enforcing the rules. And in a just society, that's all they do. They enforce fair rules in a fair way. They're not players, they're referees, and then they get out of the way. But Steve is right. I really am convinced it's designed to slowly erode away the idea that we have the freedom to do what we want to do to make our lives better. That no, you can't have this car because it'll kill the planet. No, you can't do this because it'll kill the water. You can't do this because of this. You can't do this. You should start thinking about eating bugs, because cows are going to kill the planet. All the rest of this stuff. I'll just wrap it up this way. If this had been a one-off, if this had just been just this and nothing else, we hadn't had to deal with the Victrola problems, and we haven't had to deal with the lockdowns. We didn't have to deal with any of that stuff. Scott's segment this week is on trying to reset a $31 trillion debt ceiling. If none of that existed and there was good governance and this thing happened, I'd say, okay, this is just one of those black swan events. It's just one of those things where the stars aligned incorrectly and it'll get fixed, but it's not. Necessary medication cannot be found in this country, and illegal medication that will kill thousands of people is available in this country, and that is a result of governments, and governance is a result of us. We're the people that make these decisions on governance. I have to tell you that the reason this shook me up so much was not because of what it did to me. It just made me extremely unhappy and lethargic. But it did occur to me that if somebody can say to you, no, there is none of this medicine that you've been prescribed and that you're dependent on. It's just not there. So tough luck, pal. Then what happens if it's cardiac medicine? What happens if it's insulin? What happens if it's something else? I don't like living in a world where it is possible to shut down something like medicine because the market is prevented from doing what it has to do. And I suspect the answer to this is, and I don't even know if this is what they intend, but I suspect this is where it's going. If we can't trust our government to do this, then I'm going to call Walter White, and I'm going to get Walter White to do it. He's going to come in his lab from Breaking Bad, and I'm going to go to him to do it, because there is no other choice. And we should be very alarmed about this. I'm very alarmed about it, and there is a solution. It's just that we keep voting people into office who won't allow us to use those solutions. So, no Adderall, tons of fentanyl. That's what you get when you vote this way. For Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Right Angle.